we've got a lot of stuff coming here for Cold War and Warzone in just a little bit of time. That goes out later tonight, but in the meantime, we actually did get an update for Black Ops Cold War in which it detailed a lot of technical changes, a lot of things on a fundamental level that affect your maybe game-to-game experience in both multiplayer and in zombies. So we're gonna break down everything here that changed in what is live right now, you can jump into an already experience. So as we go along, let me know your thoughts down below. A lot of what we're gonna see here out of this update is weapon tuning and weapon changes. So are there any weapons that you particularly like these adjustments that have been made? Maybe not so much. Whatever it is, feel free to let me know your thoughts down below. But hopefully enjoy the video. If you do, make sure to drop a like down below. And of course, if you are new to the channel, do be sure that subscribe button on the road to 500,000 subscribers. So if you guys would like to join the community, I'd love to have you. But said, there's a lot to talk about, so let's just jump right into it. So again, of course, we have that content that we discussed in the preview video as of yesterday, but I don't want to focus too much on that because there's quite a bit of technical changes here that will affect your game on a match-to-match basis on a fundamental level with this update. Plus, the content itself is going to be locked for another half day or so until 9 p.m. Pacific time tonight, midnight Eastern tonight, and 5 a.m. in the UK tomorrow morning. So for the immediate future, it's not as pertinent. What we've seen though is a huge number of weapon tuning across the board for Cold War's MP and zombie modes firstly. Now, to preface this is only Cold War that we're mentioning in this video. As of the release of this video, there's no word yet on if Raven will be working on any weapon changes and tuning for Warzone, though interestingly they have hinted at something being done about stopping power, which is a huge win in my books, whether it's a removal, a nerf in damage properties, or maybe a lessening of the drop frequency, who knows. But a nice step in the right direction, hopefully. But before they actually change that drop rate to like 300% and buff it or something like that to completely troll us. But anyways, Cold War specific changes for right now. Keep an eye out for the channel tomorrow morning for the update for Warzone content and of course all the new event items actually going live then. But for now, let's talk about these changes. Since I'm sure that most of you guys care about the MP side of things as opposed to zombies, let's start with there. For MP, we ended up seeing a bunch of different changes to a handful of different weapon categories. To start, sniper rifles, there was tuning across the board for every single sniper rifle. There were revising snipers with the goals of creating a more meaningful gameplay between snipers and other classes, as well as to better define the role of each sniper for each of them to have more individuality in mind when making these changes, or so they say. But when it comes down to some of these bigger changes here across the board, custom flinch was added in for each of these snipers. They said they created a sniper-specific flinch that moves the weapon aim while being hit, which is nice because this is something that hasn't been there in sniping for Cold War. This flinch is now more pronounced in ADS, and there are attachments though that do reduce flinch that have been factored into the feature update. Additionally, they adjusted ADS momentum, in which that ADS speed and momentum associated with it is now individualized for each sniper rifle. So you may feel a bit more or less weight when it comes to each specific sniper upon ADSing. But when it comes down to individual snipers and how they have been adjusted, we've seen across the board each having their own base fundamental stats adjusted, but also a lot of attachments adjusted as well. Starting with the LW3 Tundra, we saw an increase to the bullet velocity from 550 to 580 and a reduction in the ADS in momentum from 0.2 to 0.233. A minuscule reduction in that, but still a reduction no less. On the attachment side, there was a bunch of stuff here in which we saw a reduction in bullet velocity to the 28.2-inch extended barrel, the combat recon barrel, and the Tiger Team barrel. A reduction in flinch resistance with a drop shot wrap handle, field tape handle, and the SASR jungle grip as well. It increased the sprint to fire time penalty on the jungle grip as well. It reduced the flinch resistance bonus on the airborne elastic wrap and increased the sprint to fire time penalty on that wrap as well, while finally reducing aim down sight bonuses on the airborne elastic wrap on top of that. So quite a bit in terms of the ADS properties here at this and bullet velocity properties with these specific attachments. Then as for the Pellington 703, we saw an increase to the sprint to fire speed from 0.45 to 0.433. Again, a minuscule change, but one that is a change no less. There was a reduction to the bullet velocity from 500 to 478, so a slight nerf on that, and then an increase to the aim down sight time from 0.55 to 0.583. We also saw another handful of adjustments to the attachments in which it reduced the bullet velocity for the extended barrel, combat recon barrel, and Tiger Team barrel. It reduced the flinch bonus on the field tape, jungle grip, and airborne elastic grip, and then also reduced the aim down sight bonus for that airborne elastic wrap as well. Then, as for the M82, that sniper rifle Charlie, we ended up seeing a decent number of things adjusted here, in which on the fundamental level, we saw that there was an increase to the one-hit kill potential to include the mid-torso. There's an increase to the aim-down sight speed from 0.7 to 0.666, an increase to the ADS out momentum from 0.2 to 0.183, and a reduction in that ADS in momentum from 0.2 to 0.25, and a reduction in the firing speed from 0.333 to 0.833. We also saw, again, a bunch of attachments adjusted here in this as well, in which it reduced the bullet velocity on the extended barrel, combat recon barrel, and Tiger Team barrel. It increased the fire rate bonus on the rapid fire barrel. It increased the fire rate bonus on the Tiger Team barrel, and reduced the flinch resistance on the field tape and jungle grips, but also increased the sprint to fire penalty on that jungle grip as well. It reduced the flinch resistance for the airborne elastic wrap, while also increasing the sprint to fire penalty, and reduced the aim down sight speed on that airborne elastic wrap as well. The ZRG 20mm looks to be a little bit more of an anti-material rifle now at this point, in which it was something that reduced the aim down sight speed from 0.65 to 0.683. It reduced the bullet velocity from 925 to 923. It increased the ADS out momentum from 0.2 to 0.183, and reduced the ADS in momentum from 0.2 to 0.283. And what's interesting is they added custom vehicle damage here to this, which is interesting because it means that this is going to scale with different score streaks or vehicles. The larger the vehicle or score streak, the more damage the weapon is going to deal to it. Attachment wise, there were a bunch of these changed here as well, in which, again, the rest of the sniper rifle norms right now, the bullet velocity was reduced on the extended barrel, the combat recon barrel, and the Sigma special barrel. The flinch resistance was reduced on the field tape and jungle grip, as well as we saw an increase to the sprint to fire penalty on that jungle grip as well. As for the airborne elastic wrap, well, you probably guessed it, we saw a reduction in flinch resistance and the increase to the sprint to fire penalty, as well as a reduction in that aim down sight time. The final sniper rifle we can talk about here is that of the Swiss K31, in which we see now 25% less flinch than other sniper rifles, and a reduction in the bullet velocity from 700 to 684. So an interesting trade-off here, where you get less flinch, but also less bullet velocity. The barrels of the extended barrel, combat recon barrel, and Tiger Team barrel had the reduction in bullet velocity. The field tape and the jungle grip had a reduction in flinch resistance, as well as that jungle grip also having a reduction of the sprint to fire time, with the airborne elastic wrap having a reduction in the aim down sight bonus. But that's the sniper rifles here, but we also saw a handful of things made across the board in terms of changes to assault rifles. For the most part, most of the bullet velocities across the board, with only one exception, will allow for assault rifles to now have better long distance advantages over submachine guns. Treyarch also mentioned that they've standardized more headshot modifiers on assault rifles with this update, which is generally speaking pretty good for a uniform build of a rifle classification. But there will still be some differences. 5.56 ammo weapons will have a 1.4 headshot modifier, while weapons that use 7.62 ammo will have a 1.25 modifier, kind of bringing these more so in line with each other across the rifle category, since 7.62 ammo does more damage than 5.56, but essentially trying to level the playing field here with other rifles. The Krig 6 had an increase to the bullet velocity from 625 to 686, a decent adjustment here at that, an increased bullet velocity for the Ranger barrel from 100% to 126%, and a reduction in the bullet velocity penalty on the Contour barrel from 25% to 12%. So all around a buff to the Krig, a weapon that is already incredible, but having more adjustments making it even better. The AK-47 saw an increase to bullet velocity, bringing it up from 490 to 702, so a significant buff there. The FFAR had an increase to the max damage from 27 to 28, which will help out greatly whenever you're trying to land maybe one less shot. And then the FFAR also had a reduction in the bullet velocity from 705 to 629. The Groza had a reduction in the headshot multiplier from 1.4 to 1.25, and it increased the bullet velocity from 650 to 660. The QEZ increased the bullet velocity from 625 to 671. The FARA 83 increased the headshot multiplier from 1.25 to 1.4, while also increasing the bullet velocity from 675 to 729. A decent bit there, but also it reduced the maximum damage from 31 to 30 and minimum damage from 28 to 27. We also did see, though, there was a slight buff in the fact of a reduction to the bullet velocity penalty on that Contour barrel once again, like the Krig 6, bringing that from a 25% penalty to an 18% penalty. And then finally, we saw an increase to the bullet velocity of the XM4 from 550 to 657. As for LMGs, across the board, these were adjusted as well, in which they refactored bullet velocity for LMGs so that it's less reliant on the task force barrels in your builds. But as for the LMG Alpha, this increased the bullet velocity from 675 to 714 and reduced the bullet velocity bonus on the task force barrel from 100% to 41%. The RPD increased the bullet velocity from 475 to 684, a hefty buff there, and also then reduced that bullet velocity bonus on the task force barrel from 100% to 44%. The M60 saw an increase to the bullet velocity from 600 flat to 791. Again, a hefty bullet velocity increase with that, and also a reduction in that task force bonus from 100% to 39%. As for pistols, the final category that we see here across the board having adjustments made, the 1911 had an increase to the bullet velocity from 200 to 206, the Magnum had an increase to the bullet velocity from 300 to 313, and the Diamati's had an increase to the bullet velocity from 250 to 257. We also saw that the R1 Shadowhunter, the final weapon tuning here with an MP, added sniper flinch to this weapon. Now, before we jump over into any zombies discussion here, we're going to talk a little bit about some score streaks, equipment, and field upgrades, as well as some other changes that were made as well. The care package saw an adjustment that slightly increased the odds for higher score streaks to come out of a care package, and then also the destroyed care package choppers will now still drop the care package. You're not going to entirely lose that. The counter spy plane had a reduction in duration from 30 seconds to 20 seconds. The armor had a cooldown from 120 to 60 seconds. The sentry increased the number of grenade hits that it takes to kill from 1 to 2. The attack helicopter had a reduction in cost from 4,500 to 3,800, and the VTOL escort had a reduction in its cost from 6,500 to 6,200. As for equipment, the Molotov had an increase to the initial direct hit damage from 40 to 75, so likely to do more damage here with that, and also increase the damage over time from 16 to 20, so definitely allowing you to get more kills out of that likely. The gas mine was a field upgrade that was adjusted, in which this ends up increasing the damage over time from 15 to 25, and also increased the area of effect duration from 16 to 18 seconds, which is a bit much if you ask me. I'm not a fan of gas mines. I always find them to be so incredibly annoying, so to have them buffed out a little bit, not too fond of that one. But we also saw there was a reduction in the damage interval from 0.2 to 0.4 seconds, and they followed up with an explanation saying this was to hopefully give players a better chance at escaping the gas mine before dying, though that duration was extended. But again, that coming back to the duration for the damage intervals. As for movement, we saw a slight adjustment to the increase by 20 milliseconds that it takes for cameras to align with a delay coming out of a slide to stand transition. But outside of that, the only real functional changes here in terms of technical changes come down to zombies. Now, truth be told, to spare you guys a ton of just what we did here with the MP side of things and rattling off a ton of numbers, I'll put up the patch notes scrolling on screen, but the big takeaways here is that they really tried to address critical damage multipliers both in the standard and pack-a-punch versions of weapons. A huge recurring number here that you'll end up seeing across the board for a lot of these weapons is a damage multiplier from 2.8 to 4 point something, whether that be 4.4, 4.2, 4.5. You're going to see a lot of that in scrolling, and also 3.8 is another number that is a major key multiplier that was introduced here. So a lot of these weapons in, again, both the base and pack-a-punched versions are going to have those critical damage multipliers increased, which will allow you to end up dealing more damage to zombies and should hopefully help you out in later rounds, especially as those zombie health scaling increases more and more. You'll be able to breeze through hordes of zombies a lot quicker. We also saw a bunch of weapon adjustments in terms of, say, the ZRG 20mm, how that pack-a-punch bullet penetration wasn't actually a thing. The R1 Shadowhunter and ballistic knife had some projectile issues. Custom mods are a thing now. The mystery box has added the MAC-10, the Groza, the Street Sweeper, the FARA 83, the LC-10, R1 Shadowhunter, ZRG 20mm, Sledgehammer, Wakizashi, Machete, and E-Tool into the mystery box, and the weapons that are on rotation there, and a handful of other things. One thing actually when it comes to gameplay that's interesting is that maximum health caps for almost every enemy type has been raised to provide a more challenging gameplay experience after round 40. So if you're somebody that likes to go for high rounding, yes, you ended up getting those critical damage multipliers increased, but you're also going to see more health cap increases for enemies after round 40. So bear that in mind, but that is the update here and the technical things that we ended up seeing out of this update going live before the content itself in just a couple of hours afterwards. So that's it. That's where we're going to wrap it up. I'd love to get your thoughts and feedback down there in the comment section down below. What do you guys think of this update so far? Are you guys liking the technical changes that we've seen so far? Are you guys maybe not so much liking it? Whatever it is, feel free to let me know your thoughts. But hopefully enjoyed the video. If you did, make sure to drop a like down below. And of course, if you are new to the channel, make sure you guys subscribe so you don't miss a single thing reading all things Warzone, Cold War, and anything COD related, especially as this Season 3 Reloaded update comes out. We'll keep it with absolutely everything you need to know. If you're interested in any of that, hit that subscribe button. If you also want to follow me over on Twitter and Instagram, there's the best places to get connected outside of YouTube. Practive on both those. If you guys want to strike a conversation, ask me a question, whatever it may be, that link is down there in the description below. That said, thanks so much for watching. My name is Espresso. I'll see you guys later. Take care and peace.